Dylan got it bumping. Awesome, man. Good to like meet you in person, or kind of.
Yeah, say yeah, in person. This is in person 2020.
This is in person quarantine, man.
Yeah. Yes, good to
Dude, so
meet you.
and you're out in Florida.
I am in Florida. I'm in Daytona Beach, Florida. I was going to say sunny Daytona Beach, but it's not sunny right now.
Oh man, I'm out in that Cali weather right now, man. It's beautiful here.
Man. Yeah, we've
When's the
we've
last time
got
you've
a
been to
storm.
Cali?
Uh wow. I think I came in January.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
dope. What
I
were you
think
out here for?
I was in Orange County. I think it was January. I went to it was either yeah, I think it was January, February. I came for Bethel's One Saint or Young Saints.
Okay, you know Tom
Yeah.
Crandall.
I met him at that event. I was there with Michael Koulianos, so
That's
uh,
awesome, man.
yeah, yeah,
That's
it was a
so
good time.
dope. Well, man, I've heard nothing but incredible things about you from Bailey.
Uh, we all love Bailey
So,
here. She's phenomenal.
yeah, man. She said nothing but good things, man. But we're so honored to have you on, man. I know I've been able to hear you lead from my screen, never actually in person yet. But hopefully, when things open up, man, we'll get out to Florida and check you guys out. I know your pastor's Pastor Rayleigh.
Yeah, that's right.
He speaks fire, man. I always go in and watching his videos and stuff. And then I think Josh is your youth pastor. I think I've spoken to him briefly over social media and stuff.
Yeah, Josh Carter. Josh Carter. That's my brother.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, man, I
Yeah.
love to jump in. We started doing these leader lives kind of when quarantine happened, just kind of by accident. I reached out to Lou and was like, "Hey, will you do a live with me?" He's like, "Sure." And then Todd, and then pretty soon it just all these different leaders started jumping on, man. So we're again honored to have you, man, and excited just to kind of hear your story. I know when I asked Bailey, I said, "Man, what should I ask John?" And she's like, "Ask him about his testimony. It's crazy." And so
Right.
I'm interested to know, like, did you grow up in church? Did you grow up, leading worship? Was it something you've always done? What's kind of your story of where it got you where you're at? Because you're a worship leader in Florida. The name of your church,
Calvary Christian Center.
Calvary Christian Center, phenomenal church from everything I've seen and heard.
Yeah.
So was that overnight? Was that just kind of where you were born into, or what's your story?
No, so I did grow up in church, and I grew up in a city called Tampa, and it's probably 2.5 hours from where I am now. But I
Okay.
grew up there and have just always had a passion for music. Didn't really understand what God was doing in terms of developing me into what I do now, but always had a passion for music. Grew up in church there, and um, it was a great start to what we are
Yeah.
experiencing now. But yeah, so there was also Tampa was a great place to grow, but it was also, where I experienced just a lot of difficulty and some tough seasons of life.
Yeah.
My early years, I spent just really trying to make it through life. All of my older siblings grew up, and they all moved out before they were 18 years old, and so
Wow.
I
How
remember
many siblings?
so my mom had 5 kids.
Wow.
Yeah. And I don't know if we have time to go into the whole dad side of the thing and all that, but
Now I
but
gotta
just
ask you, because I'm from a divorced family. I have
yeah.
siblings from multiple. Was it all the same mom and dad? Was it broken? Because I'm oldest of six, and we got multiple dads, man, in my family.
Yeah. So we had my two older brothers, same dad, my older sister and younger brother, same dad.
Okay.
Uh, so I was a loner, as as
Yeah.
it relates to that. But yeah, so I just remember, growing up in a broken home. Mom did the best she could, and
Yeah.
did the best she could to survive and take care of us. And But we found ourselves in a season where, you know, it was just myself, her, and my younger brother, and
Wow.
times were tough, and we were in church through all of it. And that's a whole nother story. Just kind of grew up in a very controlling environment as it relates to church, and, you know, experienced a lot of things there. But yeah, at about 6 years old, I started playing piano. And you know, it was at first kind of just banging around on the piano, and then mom said it
Hmm.
started making sense. She realized I was playing what I had heard in church that day. So at an early age, just developed an ear for music, and by the time I was 17, I was the MD at the church. And then
Wow.
I left there and broke away from that particular um, situation. And man, it was intense, you know. And
Yeah.
but I went to church to become a worship leader, actually to become an MD at another church. But they ended up needing a worship leader on the fly and asked if I would do it. And I didn't know what I was doing. I still don't know what I'm doing, but I didn't know what I was doing, and just did it to fill a need. And but as soon as I started doing it, I knew, wow, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Wow.
I always tell people I came alive when that happened. And so yeah, just that was part-time ministry, and I was working a part-time job at Panera Bread and waiting for God to open a door for me to be in ministry full-time. And certainly didn't know it would look like this today. Um,
Yeah.
but then went full-time at another church in Brandon, Florida. That was in 2005, and I've been full-time ministry since 2005. But
Powerful, man.
yeah, so in that season, I know you were asking about testimony. I think what Bailey's talking about is just the testimony of how um, God caused me to overcome in times of like really poverty. You know, I was actually talking to a friend earlier today about it. We're sitting in the house, and I said, "Man, when you've been through what I've been through, you're just thankful for, you know, the simple things that we take for granted. You know, me sitting in a home that we own is a miracle within itself." Um, you know, I've been through seasons where I was, you know, had intense thoughts of suicide and depression, anxiety, all of it, abandonment, um, you know, growing up without dad and all those sorts of things. And then finding ourselves in a situation where we were homeless and couldn't even get into a shelter because there was such a huge waiting list. So I remember sleeping in a church parking lot with my mom and my little brother, just waiting to get into the shelter, and having to get vouchers for McDonald's, you know, and those were tough seasons. And the thing, though, I think what sustained me is having a mom who really believes in the power of prayer. She still is this way to this day. My mom, I joke about it now. She she'll call me, and she can't talk on the phone without just going into random praise, you know, and it's so funny. I laugh about it now, but like it was annoying when I was a kid. I was like, my goodness, we're
Yeah.
literally homeless. What are you praising God for? What are you thanking Him
Wow.
for? And she was thanking Him because she knew that God would make a way. And that was how she always was, and she still is to this day. And
Your mom was a worship leader.
oh man, she was a worship leader in her own right. And now it's so funny to see where we are now. And my mom, she will stand up front every Sunday, and just when service is over and there's an overflow and I'm leading worship, she comes and stands right in front of the altar and just stands there with just the proudest look on her face, worshiping Jesus. So yeah, there's just been a lot, and God has brought me through, man. So I'm so thankful.
It's wild, man. You know, it's interesting. I don't have the same story, but I grew up in a kind of crazy home, abusive home. Parents split up, and I got saved when I was 16. Someone bought me a juice, and so I went to this church service, and I had a praying grandma. So my mom wasn't saved, my dad wasn't saved, but my grandma was one of those crazy grandmas, put oil on everything, on doorposts, your friends, your shoes, your
Yeah.
clothes. And I remember I went to this church, I got radically saved, and not long after that, my stepdad and my mom split up, and I had to move out when I was 17. And it's crazy. I remember going to the Dollar Tree, eating spaghetti from there. I was joking around with one of my friends. I was like, man, when the looting was going on, I said, no Dollar Tree got hit. He goes, because the Dollar Tree treat us good,
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah, I remember eating, Dollar Tree spaghetti and, my mom coming up to me saying, hey, I love you, but I can't afford you. You got to find somewhere to live. And I was leading worship at the time. I'm a musician. I was leading worship at a youth group. And I think it's crazy, man. I remember those years, which I don't speak of too much anymore, but those were so formative to my faith. I feel like so many people, they don't really have trials like that.
Yeah.
Not that you need that, but man, that builds something in you. What would you say? How is what you went through with your parents' situation, with the poverty you grew up into where you're at now, how has that shaped who you are as a worship leader when you're leading? Because your guys' congregation is multicultural. You're
Yeah.
not just a African-American church. You're not just a white church. Like I've seen your guys' pictures. Even Pastor Rayleigh, he got some soul in him,
Yeah.
when he preaches. So how is that played into leading so many different people? You probably got people that are millionaires and you probably got people that are struggling. What is that? How has that played a role in how you lead?
Well, you're so right about what you're talking about in terms of our church. Like I stand there and I say this often, how beautiful it is to stand on the stage and right in front of you at the same altar, okay? Not in a special, area or anything like that. We do have the section we call VIP, and they all come in and they sit together. But in terms of worship, like during that worship set, up front in the altar, you'll see doctors, lawyers, university presidents standing right next to homeless people, some prostitution, drug addicts, and you just see them all worshiping and finding Jesus
Wow.
in the same place. It's
Come
one of the
on.
most beautiful things I've ever seen. But when you look at something like that, and Anna Bird says you look like Josh Groban, that's so funny. But but when you see that before you, I get so many flashbacks sometimes, and I think it's just like you were saying, not everyone. You said not necessarily do you need those things to happen to you in order for you to have a testimony, but what it has done is actually shown me that I can actually bring all of that into this experience. I bring all of that. I bring my brokenness. I bring, even when I was,
Wow.
I'm not going to say I haven't gone through depression since I was a kid. No, I have, but
Wow.
I've learned to bring all of that to the table when I come before the Lord, and it
Wow.
makes that time so much more special. I don't have to leave that. No, you bring it to Him, you lay it at His feet, but it's also, man, it's helped those experiences, helped those encounters. Because when you sing, you can't sing a song like, I'm going to mention the song I said I wasn't going to, Waymaker. When you sing a
Yeah.
song like Waymaker, the reason that song has become so special to me, and I wish I had written it, is because, like, when I sing that, it comes from that place. Like, I have to know Him as a Waymaker. I had to know Him as a miracle worker. I had to know that He was going to keep His promise to me. And I had to know that He was going to be a light in dark times. So these are songs, when you sing songs like this, man, and you lead people into these moments, like it's so much more special because I've been in situations where I needed a way maker, a miracle worker, a promise. I needed it. And God's been that to me. And so I believe it's just really helped me. And then, of course, God uses you to minister to people who go through the same thing. And
Yeah.
so if He did it, we say it at my church, if He did it before, He'll do it again. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So good. I had and I'm pretty sure Chandler Moore.
Yeah, yeah.
And I got to meet Chandler and Dante and all those guys. I went to the Send and we were on the same bus in Brazil. It was the most funnest bus ride I've ever been on, from jokes to them clowning on each other, talking about sneakers. But I really got to connect with Chandler. Then I was on his flight back to the States. And I remember when I was talking with him, I asked him this question. I'd love to ask you. I've noticed, at least for me, when I got saved, primarily the only stream of music I would really hear was like Hillsong. or One Way, Jesus, kind of those songs. I've really seen a drastic shift in the kind of gospel African American voice now making main stage.
Yeah.
When I was at the Send, the greatest set I remember in Florida, one of the greatest sets was Tasha Cobbs. I mean, I remember I left to the top balcony and it was the most jam-packed session. The whole stadium was jumping. When I was in Brazil, I mean, that was so awesome to see Dante and Chandler in Brazil on these stages. How have you seen the kind of gospel style music, African American voice now? How have you seen it shift and change to being main platform? Because I remember listening to "There's Power in the Name of Jesus," and I thought like Hillsong wrote it. I didn't even know Tasha wrote it.
Yeah.
And so I feel like there's been these like legendary songs that have been written by incredible people that haven't been known. Have you been able to see that change over this generation? Like just your observation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing it take more center stage, but I'm also seeing, I was talking about this with a friend the other day, and I said, man, what I'm seeing, and this was, before, what the season that we're in right now, I begin to see so much more unity in worship,
Yeah.
where there's an invitation for these voices that maybe people, other streams weren't used to. I'm seeing more streams come together, and it's unbelievable to see. And I know, I mean, not to be super spiritual, but the enemy really hates that. He hates to see God's people coming together from all different walks of life to worship the same God and
Yeah.
express themselves in their unique voice and their unique identity. Um, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's actually shifting things more than we're aware of. And I mean, it's so beautiful. When I grew up, I actually grew up in an all black church. I used to say predominantly black, but that's a lie. It was like all black. We had one we had one white guy in our church, and he was black. And but but I grew up, so it was nothing but black gospel. I mean, that's it. I didn't know who Hillsong was. I didn't know
Wow.
I didn't know who Chris Tomlin was. Um,
Wow.
Planet Shakers, I didn't know who anyone was except Fred Hammond, Kurt Franklin, Hezekiah,
Wow.
John P. Key, all these great artists. Um, and then Israel did a great job, I felt like, of bridging, those worlds together. And I was always fascinated by that. But what happened is I got exposed to different streams. And I thought, man, how beautiful would it be for that to take place on a larger scale, where you see all these streams come together and realize like we're all worshiping the same God, but in our unique way. And so that's what we're seeing, and it's shifting things on so many levels.
Yeah, and your church has really made a space for that. I can see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible to witness. I got saved in a multicultural church, and it was awesome because our church had it's like a 2,000-3,000 member church, but they had flags from all the nations. And then
Yeah.
like once a month or twice a month, they would celebrate a different culture where they bring that food from that culture. So I never knew when I got saved, I never knew what an all black church was or an all white church or all Hispanic. It wasn't until I started traveling, going places like, wow, this is what an all Korean church is like. And this is what not that those things are bad, but man, it's awesome. I think especially now in these times, I'm pretty sure the subject's been brought up quite a bit. With obviously the things going on in the world right now,
Yeah.
the rioting. I don't know how it was in Florida. LA was crazy. Being out here in SoCal, and we actually hit the streets to go out and just give waters and prayer and just talk to people and hear them. I
Yeah.
feel like in the midst of their shouting, man, they really want to be heard. And so
Absolutely.
how has it been in Florida navigating? I mean, have you guys seen anything in your city? Has it been wild? Has it been chill? What's been going on?
Yeah, well, it's not been as wild here. I mean, we've seen protests in Orlando, and even here in Daytona. There was an event in Tampa. So Florida is really coming together as well, and we're seeing a lot of peaceful protesting. Of course, you have some people that are wanting to do something else, but like really, we've seen people come together at another level, and so that's been beautiful to see. but as a worship leader, obviously it's a difficult thing to navigate. You're a believer. And so you know what you believe about the Lord and his ability to bring healing. And the question becomes, Lord, how do you want to use me to do it? Because I believe God can do anything, and
Yeah.
a lot of things he uses people to do. So, but it's been really awesome to see people coming together. And I'm one of those people that likes to see what God's doing. And so, we can tend to look at the negativity and look at
Yeah.
that. But I look behind it, underneath it, and see
Yeah.
what's God doing behind the scenes,
So
because
good.
I want to speak into that and really be a part of it. And
That's so
so,
good.
yeah, I mean, it's beautiful, man. God's doing something pretty special.
I just want to ask, have you felt pressure, um, being a black man, having to speak out, or even for you, like, I feel like you'd fall more on the side of like, man, I want to be careful what I say, because you understand the platform God's given you, and I
Yeah,
respect that so much. There's two guys on our team that they, for the first, as everything was unfolding, they were like, hey man, we just, they're both African American. One of them, I think one of them's on right now. He played for the Detroit Lions, like they, and they're like, hey, we just feel in this season to refrain from speaking, because if we speak, nothing good's going to come right in this very moment.
yeah,
Have you felt any pressure in kind of the sphere God's placed you in, as you are leading a multicultural church?
right.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
obviously, you probably know the heart of your church is not that at all. But
yeah.
have you felt pressure to speak, or even not to speak? Or I'd love just to know.
Yeah, initially you feel the pressure. In terms of our environment here at our church, pastor doesn't really put any pressure on me in that sense. I remember when things started to get really heated, I was actually at his house and we were just talking about it, and he said, essentially, son, I just want to hear your heart. Like
Wow.
I'm he's been in this a long time, and he's done even urban ministry for several years since he was a kid. And so he just really has a heart to see unity, and he's been that way for so long, man. I mean, he was literally raised that way. So I haven't felt pressure there. I mean, I felt pressure initially with people outside of the church, and and of course, you have people. When you're in a church, any size, you have mixed feelings, mixed emotions. I mean, but we experienced that during election time too. But
Yeah.
I think I think for me, the initial pressure is, first of all, I mean, I have personal experience with racism and division and all those things. And
In
I
your
try,
state, or
oh, in my state, yeah.
what would you mind? Is there one particular that you're like, man, this has been something that's shaped me, or if you feel
Yeah,
comfortable sharing?
sure, sure. Yeah. So the most intense thing, I'll say that was the scariest, was I lived in a city, I would say the city. I lived in Plant City. And when I lived there, Plant City is not the most progressive town. I mean, it's somewhat progressive, but it's not the most. It's kind of like backwoods. But Um, I loved my time there, but I also experienced most of my encounters that I've had as it relates to racism. They all happened there. But I was at a
Wow.
gas station one day, and I was pumping gas into my SUV, and I saw this truck pull in, and I saw these guys, and they just kind of like smirk at me or whatever, and I was just like, whatever. And so they go inside, and it's a truck full of them. They're packed inside the truck, and then on the back of the truck bed, there's tons of guys on the back of it. And they come back out, and when they came back out, they drive up to me, and when they get next to me, they just started shouting, the N word, and spitting outside the truck and spitting at me and telling me, "You don't belong here in this city.
Wow.
Get out of here," and flicking me off and all that kind of stuff. And then they just sped off. And I just remember now, I'm going to tell you the part of the story that that is probably not the best thing for me. My reaction, I was angry, and I just remember throwing the gas pump and getting into my SUV, and I went after. I was so stupid. I went after them, and they didn't know I was coming after them. The light stopped. I mean, the light turned red, and I pulled up next to them, and I let the window down. And I don't recommend anyone doing this, but I did.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
let, I let the window down, and I said, "Hey," and they all looked at me, and I said, "You got the right one tonight, but one day you may get the wrong one." And I just remember like this rush. My hands were shaking, and I didn't know the guy whether they had guns. I didn't know, if they were going to get out because I was outnumbered by far.
Hmm.
And the light turned green, and I just drove off. And they could have followed me home. I mean, my wife was so upset with me that night because she said it could have been anything that happened.
Yeah.
But um, you know, I just was more so angry that we were in the 2000s and we're still talking about this. We're still dealing with this. But I didn't allow that though to make me bitter. Um, like my pastor says, you can either allow seasons to make you bitter or better. And so
Hmm.
I thought, man, how can I become better? Like, how do I respond in a way that Jesus would respond? Because obviously, I don't think Jesus would have gone after them with the anger that I had. But that was just one of the situations, and I just it was unfortunate. It's sad. We wanted to rent a house from a lady, and I guess when I talk, I don't sound white. And she was so interested in renting the house to us. This was years ago, and when we show up, she goes, "Oh, black people," and
No.
I just it caught me off guard, and I just went, "Wait, what? What just happened? Is this happening to me? To me, like someone who just loves people. I mean, I genuinely love people, and I'm not going to cry on this podcast, but I just really love people, and I can't see myself treating anyone that way for any reason, social, economic, race. I mean, whatever. Treating anyone in that regard. But I also understand that people are hurting and they're broken, and some people don't know that they're broken, and they try to break others. And so, um, through all of that, I remember being at a church and being hired at a church, and one of the board members asking the pastor, "Did you have to hire a black man?" And it hurt me. I mean, I wanted to leave, not because I was upset, but because, I mean, that just saddens you. Don't want to be somewhere
Yeah.
where people, think that way. Of course, the pastor responded in such an amazing way, got the guy off the board and all that. But, these are situations like so when things happen in seasons like we're in now, I always, thankfully, I've been able to just ask the Lord, what do you see? How do you see these people? What do you see when you look at them? And I believe really the Lord grieves. Um, I believe he weeps at the state of humanity, and he wants people healed. And that's the reality. So that's what I want. Like I want the racist to be healed. I want the
Wow.
racists to have that broken off of them, off of their lives. It's a learned behavior, and I think it's a sin. It's sickening, and but I want to know like how will God use me in my relationships with people. I spend so much time out in the city with people who don't look like me, and I want that to be seen. I want people to see that I can sit and have coffee with someone who doesn't look like me, and we can talk and we can relate, we can share our experiences, and we can see healing. Like, so we
Wow.
all need the same Jesus, man. So
Man, thank you.
yeah,
I'll be honest, it's been a wild journey this last week's navigating. One Voice is very multicultural, man. I've had people who are Korean, Norway, Hispanic, Black. I mean, you taught me we've had white people, you name it. We've had them. And One Voice has always been like that. It was crazy. I was watching last night. I've primarily have went to urban schools for the last 10 years. So I've been in Compton. I've been in South Central. I mean, there's a testimony of a kid I preached to in 2011 who was, selling drugs and doing crazy stuff, and came to a Jesus club and got saved and went to the Green Bay Packers. And I mean, I had these stories of these guys, another guy, and just, you know, again, similar story. And I think for me, I've always, since I've been saved, God has used our movement to speak into these kind of crazy, wild neighborhoods, and you know, where I'd see kids and they didn't have no dads, and for me, I was like, oh, I relate to you, I get that, you know. And I
Yeah.
think being brown, you know, Hispanic, I just kind of related to everybody. But I've never actually, just because I've related, I've never actually connected my heart to people's pain, and I think that's what's been so different this last season for me. As I'm sitting back, my wife was talking to me yesterday. She's like, man, this is bigger than just race. There's a system issue that's been set up in America where it's almost systematic racism, you know. And you see it in Hispanic culture. I mean, you know, I don't know how the black community is, but growing up, it was very different for a Hispanic woman to date a black guy, and it wasn't anything that was, you know, my grandparents wouldn't directly say it, but it was kind of like, hey, you know, like it's like marry into your own kind of thing, you know. And that's a form of racism. And
Yeah.
I didn't realize when I got saved, like, man, my first mentor was a black guy, and his name was Jeremiah. And I'll never forget him. Like, he was so instrumental to me. One time he smacked me with a Bible, and I was like, "Why, you can't hit me? You ain't my dad." He goes, "I don't gotta be your dad to hit you." Whap, hit me again, you know. And it was totally messing around, but he formed me, and it was amazing. His dad was in prison, his mom was a prayer warrior, like. And so looking like where we're at now, man, and even hearing your story, like, it makes sense why Jesus is platforming you the way he is. And I think God, even your voice, man, I've heard you sing. It's just like from here to here, you know, there's no boundary line to where you can go. But I even think your gift is making a way to put you before so many people, man, to even, I don't know, even share those experiences are crazy, man, in Florida. That's so
Yeah.
wild. And I don't think I've connected either. I grew up in the Bay Area. And so, you know, the Bay is so diverse. It wasn't until I moved out to like Elk Grove, I remember going to my high school and seeing for the first time people in trucks with Confederate flags. I didn't even know what that was. You know, I'm like, what is this? This is crazy. But man, that's so wild, man. Thank you just so much for sharing that.
Yeah. Well, I want people to know, like, those experiences happen. I mean, this is going to sound like a funny statement because we always say that's a token statement, but you know, most of my closest friends, you know, are Caucasian, and I have, my wife will tell you, we have people in our home all the time that literally stay in our home. They sleep in our home. They come in town, and they're white, they're Hispanic, they're black, they're Asian, they're
Wow.
Spanish. I mean, you name it, and we've had them in our home. Chinese, like, and we just love people, and
Yeah.
we're not going to let these situations that have happened, and you know, this whole issue of racism, we're not going to let it stop us from loving people. And you know, so I would encourage people to just love, like, but you have to ask. I mean, I need the Holy Spirit. Okay, Pastor says you don't need the Holy Spirit to make it to heaven. You need the Holy Spirit to go through Walmart. You know, but, like, I
So
need
good.
I need the Holy Spirit. And that is the only way that I am able to say, God, show me your heart toward this person who's lashing out against me. Um, Show me your heart for those who are even the looters, like the people who are stealing things and, you know, robbing businesses. Lord, show me your heart for them. I need, you know, what would Jesus see when he looks at these people? The initial response we have
Wow.
is to be angry and to be frustrated. But I remember sitting in, hearing a pastor from, I believe it's, gosh, I always mix it up, and this is bad, North Carolina or South Carolina, where the shooting happened in the church. And I heard that pastor preach a message on forgiveness, and his wife was murdered in that shooting. And I, I went, oh, surely I can forgive people. Um, but to hear people that have been through situations like that, literally wife murdered by someone who came in and wanted to just shoot a bunch of black people, and his wife happened to be one of the people that was murdered. To hear him stand up and talk about his story of forgiveness and how Jesus helps us to forgive people, the Spirit of God, it was just amazing. So I don't, I stand for those who have been marginalized. I stand with them. I myself have been through situations. I've shared some of that. But at the end of the day, like, I want people to experience the same Jesus that I did, because the same Jesus that broke me free from my sin can break them free from their sin, and that has to be my ultimate desire. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's so good, man. That's so good, man. How long have you been married?
13 years.
13 years. And your wife has navigated obviously all these seasons with you.
Yeah.
What has been the most profound thing from your relationship that has led to the way you lead worship? Um, you know what I mean? I've been married for almost 6 years, and we got 3 kids. I got a month-old little boy and 2 daughters. And
Wow.
so, I mean, I know how profound it's been for me to have my family. What has it been like for you? What has been some things that you would say, man, this is what has come from my marriage in how I lead? Or what have you learned in marriage?
Patience. My wife is probably one of the most patient people I've ever met. She's extremely selfless. Um, for the whole 13 years, she has been just wow. Super supportive of ministry. And, ministry can be very time consuming. We allow ministry sometimes to consume us, and it consumes us. I remember early on, man, I was, so you remember coming from a home that didn't have a father, I had to learn a lot by being married. And my wife was so gracious, during that season, and she still is, if things get busy or whatever. But I think I've learned patience, like, from her, to see how patient she is, how supportive she is. Um, she is a huge supporter, and she's the one who prays me through everything. Um, and I would say the most profound thing has been her love for me, her patience, and her willingness to pray and cover me.
So
Um,
good.
those are the things that um, probably are most profound.
You said something that I haven't heard too many people say, and I think it's because, and I can relate to this because we've lacked family and healthy family.
Yeah,
I mean, I think, good 98% of the problems in my marriage has come from me because I grew up with a very dysfunctional home.
yeah,
My mom's been married multiple times, and my dad is, I mean, I just very dysfunction in my house. And so I remember when I got married, my wife would say, "Man, why do you yell all the time?" And I'm like, "I'm not yelling, I'm talking. Like I talk loud, because growing up, man, if I didn't yell, no one listened to me." And so what would you say were some of what would you say is the number one lesson you learned having to learn in your marriage, not having an example of that, that you would say? Because I love that. Like, I learned how to do family in my marriage.
yeah,
You saw like you had a God, maybe you did have a godly example, but you probably have a godly father that was that example for you, trailblazing. What
yeah.
would be one thing that you'd say, man, I learned this while in it?
I would say that it's God first, then family and ministry. And I think, there you go. She's not patient today, but she's usually patient. I'm just kidding. No, I'm kidding. Um, I think for me, that was the biggest thing that I learned while in it. Because I went from single to married with 3 kids. We're actually a blended family. So there's a lot I learned, like, on the fly.
Instant.
And instant. Like,
And it was her children, your children.
yeah, she had 2 boys, I had a girl. So
Instant parents.
instant, like, married with 3 kids.
And how
And
was it now? Because I was a terror to my stepdad. So
yeah,
I know man, because I was so broken and hurt.
yeah.
Was that transition hard coming into having to father 2 boys?
Thank God, no. Uh,
Wow.
my boys, they, oh man, they we didn't have any of those issues.
It's
Um,
awesome.
and like it was beautiful. But they were really young too. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, we've been so blessed in that area. But that's the thing that I learned, like, because I mean, I grew up in the church, and we were in church every day. If that building was open, we were in there, and we didn't have a choice. So through all the difficulty, through all the stupidity that I was doing, like that all had to happen while I was still going to church regularly. So
Wow.
I didn't have a chance to walk away for a season. Like there wasn't
Yeah.
a walking away. My mom would yank my tail right back in there. Um, so, ministry actually I got to see in some ways, and I know my mom would admit this, that, in a lot of the sense, ministry actually was put first, even as we were growing up. I watched my mom, she'd get blessed financially, and I watched her just give it. And we were needing that money, and I would just be like, what are you doing? And, at the time, it was a situation that was very, it was a different situation we grew up in, man. We don't even
Yeah.
have time for that on this, but just really grew up in an environment that was manipulative and controlling, and God broke us away from that. But um, so, growing up that way, I mean, that's all I knew was
Yeah.
every church had to be it. And so I had to grow out of that, where I had to have examples of men that
Wow.
actually led their families in an incredible way. And I think one of the greatest examples I've had is, his name is Jim Rodriguez. You know Mike Dow? Do you know Michael Dow?
He looks
Burning
like Sean Smith.
Burning Ones?
Half black, half white.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I know. I've been on a show with those guys. Him and
Okay.
Daniel, and
Yeah.
yeah,
So
and then
Mike,
that other guy who he's from Australia, not Australia. Not Planet Shakers, Shaking the Nations.
oh, Shake the Nations. He's from London. That's Nathan
London.
Morris.
Yeah, there we go.
Nathan Morris.
Yeah,
Okay,
Nathan
so
Morris. Yeah.
Michael Dow, he's one of my closest friends. He was my best man at my wedding. The church that he got saved in was also the church that we were part of, and when I met Pastor Jim Rodriguez, that's his father-in-law. Um, he was one of the greatest examples I had of family. Just watching the way he loved his family, loved his kids, loved his grandkids, spent time with them. They came first, like you knew it. And he was one of the greatest examples I've ever had of that. And he's still, he's one of those guys that if he walks in the room now, I would just fall apart just because I love him that much. And my pastor as well. I mean, wow. I've never seen a pastor and his wife do ministry together at the level that Pastors Jim and Dawn Rayleigh do. I've never seen it. And done in a healthy way, to where they both bring something significant to the table and they honor each other's giftings.
How long you
And
been there?
I've been here 7 years,
Wow.
and I'm telling you, it's wild. If you see it, people ask me all the time, because when people come in and visit for the weekend, they go, "Man, do they do this all the time?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's them, man." They come up and they basically live out their relationship in front of the church, like as a mom and dad, and it's pretty wild. And we know, as far as the Rayleighs are concerned, we know Dawn, Courtney, Channing, and Peyton come first. And it's beautiful. I've not seen it done to this level, the way that I see them, and so he's been such a huge example um, to me, and has impacted me in so many ways. But he's one of those pastors that's in your grill. Are you spending enough time with your family? Hey, son, not every opportunity is your opportunity. How long is it taking you away from your family? Are you, and it's out of this fatherly, he's a dad. So, yeah, it's been
Wow.
pretty amazing.
That's powerful. And I know I've been at the same church now since I moved to LA, going on 10 years. And I think what was so awesome was when I got here, I was super open with my pastor. I was like, "Hey, I have a hard time trusting, and man, I'm rebellious at moments." And he laughed and he looked at me. He goes, "You're a wild buck no one's tamed." And he goes, let me tame you. And so I remember I had to make a covenant with him, because I knew if I don't make a commitment to you, the moment you tell me something I don't like, my personality is, I'm gonna dip. And I remember making that. I remember there was so many moments he'd be rebuking me in his office, in love, but it was hard stuff to hear. And I remember just wanting to get up and leave, and I'm like, man, but I said I wouldn't leave. And I just, as we're closing, growing up with a broken home, I'm pretty sure there's been dad moments that have popped up for you where it's been it has been easy, but it's like, oh, like this is pretty sure in 7 years, there's been moments of bumping heads a little bit.
Yeah.
What has kept you at that same location, kept you faithful? I've heard you quote your pastor so many times over this last 45 minutes, which to me speaks volumes of who he is. What has been the number one thing that has kept you there, committed to that house, navigating not just ministry, but even father things that would come up to you, as he's a spiritual dad to you?
Yeah. Well, I would say number one is knowing that God called me here.
Come on.
Number two is knowing my pastor's heart for me. He has my best interest at heart. We have the tough conversations, and we, of course, have bumped heads before, but the way those situations are handled, it looks like, and I know he doesn't mind me sharing this, it looks like him coming over to my office. He'll just walk over there randomly and sit down on my couch and say, hey, what's up? That means a lot. Like, it means a lot, because some people, they don't care. They're going to have a meeting with you and just kind of say, this is what it's going to be. He literally comes and talks to me like a dad. I need you to, hey, and if he's upset, I know it. Hey, I need you to help me with something. When he says that, you're like, oh, what did I do? But knowing his heart for me is so critical for me.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I kind of alluded to some of the things that I grew up in, and it was a lot. What I grew up in was, hey, here's money out of the offering, go give it to one of my mistresses, and all kinds of things that, like I said, we don't have time on this. Right? So having a spiritual father who has integrity and loves me, not for what I bring to the not necessarily for what I bring to the table and what I can do for him, but just legitimately loves me because I'm a son.
Was it difficult, the fact that he was white? Did that play a healing in your life? The fact that he was a different race, did it heal anything in your heart at all?
Yeah, I honestly, I don't know that part was difficult for me, because, when you look at his ministry, it's been that way for a long time. He came here and they told him it wouldn't be possible. But he just loved people, brought people together. And we, over the years have gotten flack for being the biggest white church and the biggest black church in town. He just cares so much about people, regardless of where they come from. And he has shown that, and he's taught me that too, at a deeper level. Son, love people, love people, love people. Even when you want to respond and be like, oh, I just want to tell them to get lost.
Yeah.
Like, just watching him handle people in such a loving and gracious way. Those kinds of things have healed things in me. The way he has loved me has actually healed me in so many different ways.
So awesome. Well, man, Pastor John, thank you so much for jumping on, man. We're gonna edit this and put it up on YouTube and make it available for people. But I am so thankful for your life, and so thankful, man. I really pray I get to meet you, give you a hug when this whole Corona thing's over. I'm not tripping, but I want to honor other people.
Yeah.
But man, thank you so much for who you are, man. For again what you've done, even in Bailey's life. Again, she speaks so highly of you. I remember we were excited when we were going to do something in Florida to have you come and lead, and then we just had to kind of postpone things. But man, we're excited one day to even do ministry together with you, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you. We honor your time, and thank you.
Well, it was an honor for me. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
man. I'll look forward to meeting you in person one day.
Yeah, same,
So,
same.
well, bless you, Pastor John. Thank you, man. We'll see you soon.
Okay, bless
All
you.
right, man.